For centuries, the legend of King Solomon's tomb has persisted, an irresistible siren song calling to historians, adventurers, and treasure hunters alike. The idea that the final resting place of such a powerful and wise king might still lie hidden, filled with untold riches and ancient secrets, has fueled countless expeditions and sparked endless speculation. But why this enduring fascination? What is it about Solomon that continues to captivate us even today? Well, consider the image of Solomon that's been carefully crafted for us throughout history. He's not just any king. He's presented as a figure of unparalleled wisdom, divinely blessed with the ability to understand the language of animals, mediate disputes with unparalleled fairness, and amass a fortune that dwarfs even the wildest fantasies. The Bible describes his reign as a golden age of peace and prosperity for Israel, a time when the kingdom's influence stretched across vast distances, and its power was unchallenged. And all this creates an irresistible mystique. A king of such magnitude, surely his final resting place would be equally magnificent, right? But here's the rub. Despite all the grand stories and epic descriptions, the location of Solomon's tomb has remained stubbornly elusive. The Old Testament, while detailing his life, his reign, and the construction of the magnificent First Temple, is conspicuously silent about his burial. No grand mausoleum is described, no specific location mentioned, no poignant account of his funeral procession. It's as if the script just stops, and that very silence is what has fueled centuries of searching and theorizing. Throughout the ages, numerous theories have emerged, each more elaborate and imaginative than the last. Some believe that the tomb lies directly beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, hidden deep within the ancient bedrock and protected by elaborate traps and ancient curses. Imagine the thought, a secret chamber, sealed millennia ago, holding not only the king's remains, but also untold treasures and forbidden knowledge. Others suggest that the tomb is located far from the city, hidden in the hills surrounding Jerusalem, or within the labyrinthine caves of the Judean desert. These theories often rely on local legends and fragmented historical accounts, hinting at secret passages and concealed entrances known only to a select few. The Knights Templar, those legendary warrior monks of the Middle Ages, even got in on the act. Driven by a combination of religious zeal and the promise of uncovering sacred relics, they embarked on their own searches beneath Jerusalem, convinced that Solomon's tomb held secrets that could reshape the world. The 19th century saw a renewed wave of exploration, fueled by the rise of biblical archaeology and a romantic fascination with the ancient world. Adventurers and scholars alike descended upon Jerusalem, armed with shovels, pickaxes, and half-baked theories, eager to uncover the truth behind the legend. They scoured the city of David, explored the Kidron Valley, and investigated every possible hiding place, often guided by local folklore and cryptic maps. But the results were consistently disappointing. Time and again, these expeditions came up empty-handed, finding nothing but shattered stones, collapsed tunnels, and the bitter taste of frustration. Many prominent archaeologists, weary of the fruitless searches, began to dismiss the entire endeavor as a romantic fantasy, a fool's errand based on wishful thinking and a misunderstanding of historical texts. Some even proposed that the tomb never existed at all. Perhaps Solomon was buried in a simple, unmarked grave, like many other rulers of the ancient world. Or perhaps his tomb was destroyed long ago, lost to the ravages of time, war, or natural disaster. Some scholars suggested the destruction was deliberate, either by invaders intent on erasing any trace of Israelite power, or even by the Israelites themselves, seeking to conceal the tomb's location from potential desecration. Regardless of the reason, the lack of concrete evidence led many to conclude that the search for Solomon's tomb was nothing more than a wild goose chase, a pursuit of a mythical treasure that would never be found. By the early 20th century, the quest had largely faded from the archaeological radar. Deemed a romantic folly, best left to dreamers and novelists. Yet, even as scientific skepticism grew, the legend of Solomon's tomb refused to die. The whispers continued, passed down through generations, fueled by local folklore and the enduring allure of the biblical narrative. Pilgrims visiting the Western Wall in Jerusalem would often murmur prayers, convinced that the remains of the wisest king lay hidden beneath their feet. The idea of a lost tomb, filled with untold riches and ancient knowledge, continued to capture the imagination of people from all walks of life. And in recent years, new archaeological discoveries have reignited the debate, adding fresh fuel to the centuries-old mystery. Evidence uncovered at copper mines in Timnah, believed to have been part of Solomon's vast wealth-generating empire, suggests that the biblical accounts of his riches may be more accurate than previously thought. Similarly, the discovery of ancient trade routes linking Africa, India, and Arabia provides further support for the biblical descriptions of Solomon's extensive trading networks. If Solomon was indeed a historical figure, a powerful and wealthy king whose reign shaped the ancient world, then surely his tomb must exist somewhere, right? This question has spurred a new generation of explorers and archaeologists to take up the search, armed with modern technology and a renewed sense of hope. The legend endures, and the quest for Solomon's tomb continues. But what happens when that legend collides with modern technology and a sudden Jerusalem rainstorm? That's when things get really interesting. Beneath Jerusalem's sun-baked hills in the shadow of the city of David lies the unassuming village of Silwan. For millennia, Silwan has guarded its secrets, its ancient stones whispering tales of biblical kings and forgotten empires. But now, after centuries of silence, a new chapter is being written in Silwan's history. A chapter etched in dust, carved in limestone, and sealed with a mystery that could rewrite our understanding of King Solomon himself. Our story begins, not with a triumphant fanfare, but with a crack in the earth, a subtle shift in the landscape after an unusually heavy rain. A team of archaeologists, led by the intrepid Dr. Emily Carter, had been conducting routine surveys in the area, mapping the labyrinthine network of tunnels and water systems that honeycomb the region. They were searching, not specifically for Solomon's tomb, but for a better understanding of Jerusalem's ancient infrastructure. What they stumbled upon, however, was far more significant than anyone could have imagined. Ground-penetrating radar revealed anomalies beneath the surface, not the expected random patterns of natural formations, but straight lines, sharp angles, and unnatural voids. This wasn't just geology, it was architecture, a deliberately constructed underground complex. Initial theories ranged from a forgotten Roman storage facility to a previously undocumented section of Jerusalem's elaborate aqueduct system. But as the team painstakingly excavated, clearing away centuries of accumulated debris, the true nature of the discovery began to dawn on them. They unearthed a hidden tunnel system, meticulously carved into the bedrock, its passages twisting and turning like a subterranean maze. Some tunnels led to dead ends, deliberately misleading the unwary. Others doubled back on themselves, creating a disorienting labyrinth designed to deter intruders. It was clear that whoever built this complex had gone to extraordinary lengths to keep it hidden. This wasn't simply a place to store water or supplies. It was a vault, a secret repository, its purpose shrouded in mystery. And then came the markings, scratched into the walls of the tunnel, almost invisible beneath layers of grime, were ancient Hebrew symbols. Dr. Carter and her team carefully cleaned and documented these inscriptions, their excitement growing with each new discovery. The symbols were unlike anything they had encountered before, a complex combination of geometric patterns and stylized characters. They appeared to be a code, a key to unlocking the secrets of the tunnel system. One recurring motif stood out, a series of 7 lines arranged in a specific pattern, followed by 7 distinct symbols. The number 7 held immense significance in ancient Israel, often associated with divine creation and the construction of the first temple. Could these markings be a clue to the origins of the tunnel, a connection to the reign of King Solomon himself? The excavation process was fraught with challenges. The limestone bedrock was unstable, prone to collapse. The tunnels were narrow and claustrophobic, making it difficult to maneuver equipment. And the location of the site in the heart of Silwan, a politically sensitive area, added another layer of complexity. Every step had to be carefully planned and executed, with meticulous attention to detail. As news of the discovery spread, Security was tightened around the site. There were concerns about looting, vandalism, and even potential acts of terrorism. The team knew that they were sitting on something of immense historical and religious significance, and they were determined to protect it. After weeks of painstaking work, the team finally reached a sealed chamber, its entrance blocked by a massive stone slab. The slab was seamlessly integrated into the surrounding rock, its surface smooth and unadorned. There were no visible hinges, no handles, no obvious way to open it. It was as if the entrance had been intentionally concealed, designed to remain hidden for all eternity. For days, the team pondered how to breach the seal without damaging the chamber or its contents. They used laser scanners and 3D modeling to create a detailed map of the slab and its surroundings, searching for any weakness, any clue as to how it might be opened. They consulted with engineers, historians, and experts in ancient construction techniques. Finally, they devised a plan. Using a system of pulleys and levers, they would apply gentle, even pressure to the slab, hoping to dislodge it without causing it to shatter. The tension in the air was palpable as the team began to execute their plan. Slowly, painstakingly, they tightened the ropes, applying more and more pressure to the stone. And then, with a low, grinding groan that echoed through the tunnel system, the slab began to move. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. For a moment, the team feared that the tunnel was about to collapse. But then the tremors subsided, and the slab continued to shift, inch by agonizing inch. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the slab cracked open, revealing a narrow opening into the chamber beyond. A rush of cold, stale air escaped from the opening, carrying with it the scent of dust, earth, and something else, something ancient and indefinable. It was the breath of centuries, the air that had been sealed within this chamber since the time of King Solomon himself. Holding their breath, Dr. Carter and her team peered into the darkness, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. What they saw took their breath away. The chamber was filled with astonishing treasures, golden vessels, ornate menorahs, precious jewels, and ancient artifacts. It was a scene straight out of the Arabian Nights, a glimpse into the opulence and grandeur of King Solomon's court. But more importantly, the chamber was also filled with knowledge, inscriptions, scrolls, and symbols that held the key to unlocking the secrets of the past. The discovery was more than anyone could have hoped for. The journey to unearthing forbidden knowledge had just begun. The treasures dazzled everyone, but it wasn't the gold that held the team in place. It was the silence, and then the carvings. Torchlights swept across the chamber's walls, revealing shapes that were neither random nor ornamental. Lines cut deep into limestone, twisted into spirals, triangles, and ratios that looked less like decoration and more like blueprints. These weren't merely inscriptions of faith or art, they were instructions. The chamber didn't feel like a tomb anymore. It felt like a library written in stone. At the center of the northern wall, one symbol dominated: a star. Sharp, deliberate, and etched with precision, it bore an uncanny resemblance to what later generations would call the Star of David. But this wasn't a national emblem carved on a flag centuries later. This was ancient, raw, and connected directly to Solomon's reign. To legends, it was more than a symbol. It was the Seal of Solomon, a mark said to carry mystical power, capable of commanding spirits and sealing away knowledge too dangerous for ordinary men. To find it here, in the depths of a hidden chamber, was enough to make even the most skeptical archaeologists hesitate. And the walls bore much more. Intertwined with the star were lines of geometric patterns, angles so precise they practically resembled higher mathematics. Ratios of circles to squares, spirals mapped almost perfectly, and alignments that suggested astronomical calculations. One scholar muttered that this looked like Solomon's calculus notebook, half joking but half serious. These carvings hinted at an understanding so far ahead of its time, as though the builders encoded knowledge about architecture, astronomy, and perhaps even sacred geometry itself, into the stone itself. In a far corner of the room, the team found clay tablets stacked in piles. Some were cracked and eroded, while others were remarkably intact. The writing on it was tight, dense, and deeply inscribed in Hebrew. The first clay tablet detailed the dimensions of the temple. It almost perfectly aligned with the Book of Kings. Just this one was amazing, actual physical proof of texts held through thousands of years. But the second tablet shook everyone to the core. It was not as orderly as the first. The script unraveled into riddles, phrases that bent grammar and defied any sort of easy translation. Keys, hidden wisdom, the voice within the stone. It sounded more like a cipher than something you would think of as an actual record. One phrase really stood out. The light of knowledge is locked until the star is turned. The archaeologists cast nervous glances at one another. What exactly was it? A metaphor, a poetic flourish, or instruction? The phrasing rang with echoes of texts linked to the so-called Key of Solomon, often considered a pseudo-medieval compilation of magical writings. Yet all of a sudden, in a hall sealed for the last 3,000 years, came the danger that such legends might have roots much older than anyone dared believe. Then followed a discovery that silenced the space. Set into the southern wall, almost hidden under deep layers of detritus, lay a chest. It was small, no bigger than a piece of modern luggage, yet it fought with the space it occupied. No one moved to open it. The atmosphere was somehow against it. Carter recorded in her notebook that even standing next to it was the feeling of trespassing in someone else's memory. The team cataloged the chest, photographed it from all angles, and discussed its fate. To try to force it open would probably lead to its destruction. To leave it alone would be to resist the very temptation that had drawn them here. And then came the words that ignited a worldwide academic firestorm. The chest remained sealed, heavy with questions, but something else soon pulled the team's attention away. Along the eastern wall of the chamber, half hidden behind layers of dust and soot, faint scratches caught the light. At first, they seemed like erosion, nothing more than the scars of time. But when carefully brushed and illuminated, they revealed something extraordinary. Hebrew letters, clean and deliberate, carved into the stone. Unlike the geometric patterns, these weren't codes or symbols. They were words. And as the sentences took shape, a hush fell over the room. The inscription read, "May wisdom guide my hand as stars guide sailors." Simple, poetic, yet haunting. The style matched ancient Hebrew, and its tone echoed the voice of Proverbs, wisdom literature traditionally attributed to Solomon himself. For Carter and her team, it was as though the walls had opened to let the king speak across the gulf of 3,000 years. It wasn't a relic or a vessel. It was a message. The chaos in the team's tent at base camp had erupted. Images of the inscription slid down the secure channels and came to rest on the desks of scholars far and wide. By that evening, professors were dissecting the text in late-night calls, live-streamed debates, and heated emails. Some called it the smoking gun, the first immediate personal trace of Solomon ever to emerge. While others scoffed, saying the phrasing was too polished, too poetic, it seemed rather to be intended for lending credence to belief than for recording history. Skeptics say it could have been carved by a scribe to glorify Israel's most famous king centuries later, but the story doesn't end here. Just below the major inscription, faint outlines of other symbols appeared, somewhat less Hebrew and anything but abstract. Some saw hints of Persian influence, thus possibly indicating later additions. The uncertainty served to stoke more outrage. Was this really Solomon, or was it later effrontery to mimic him? Yet the words meant something. It felt personal, almost contemplative. The voice of a ruler looking out into the stars for guidance while under the crushing weight of power. News media weren't long to respond to the situation, screaming headlines of every description. Solomon's last words found, biblical hoax in Jerusalem. Witnesses' reactions covered all the shades of respect, awe, and caution. Rabbis went through the scrolls, examining the phrases against the judges of known scripture. Christian theologians therein confirmed the existence of a king who, according to the Bible, existed. By Quranic tradition, Muslims, who regard Sulaiman as a prophet, weighed the argument. The social media feed exploded with opinions, speculations, theories, and heated arguments. Some deemed it as proof of the historicity of the stories found in the Bible. Others have called it a dangerous manipulation. Comparatively speaking, Dr. Carter's position was that of an island in a storm, calm yet conciliatory. The academic, her very standing resembling the most fragile color of light, added, "We weren't looking for a king, but the clues kept pointing toward him. And when history speaks even in whispers, we owe it to the world to listen." For every weight of her warning, all scholars and archaeologists knew that no one inscription, however potent, could hush the case. It might excite the argument, but could never settle it. But the real shock came when another name appeared inside the tomb. When the dust settled on the eastern wall, what emerged wasn't just another inscription. It was a name, one that thundered across history and scripture: Sheba. The letters were chiseled with the same deliberate hand as the Solomon inscription, but the message they carried felt even heavier. This wasn't a random carving. It was a record of a royal visit around 950 BCE, the very story described in the Book of Kings and echoed in the Quran. Solomon and Sheba, two figures separated by continents yet united in legend, were suddenly bound together in stone. The moment the team translated her name, the air shifted. Carter recalled it as time-stopping in real life. For centuries, Sheba's story has fascinated believers and skeptics alike. The Queen of Sheba, ruler of a wealthy kingdom in either modern-day Ethiopia or Yemen, is said to have traveled with caravans loaded with spices, jewels, and riddles to test Solomon's wisdom. In the biblical account, she left Jerusalem awestruck, declaring that not even half of Solomon's greatness had been told to her. To Muslims, she was Bilqis, a monarch who conversed with Prophet Suleiman and witnessed his divine wisdom firsthand. To many, she was a figure who blurred the line between history and myth, and here she was now, in stone, not in scripture, not in oral tradition, but in a hidden chamber beneath Jerusalem. The carving not only had her name, it also recounted a royal exchange: ivory, frankincense, gold, an encounter that solidified the seal of alliance, not just admiration. Hints of common knowledge, trade, and diplomacy, bridges across kingdoms. This raised all kinds of explosions for historians. It suggested that if authentic, then contrary to folklore, the visit was actually an event that altered the political and economic geography of the ancient Near East. However, the discovery, notwithstanding its glorious causation, again turned the sides of opinions. Almost instantaneously, religious authorities from Judaism, Christianity, and Islam jumped onto the carving and declared it proof. The priests found evidence of scripture incarnate. The imams cited Surah 27 of the Quran, which mentions Sheba coming to Suleiman, and drew parallels with this recently uncovered text. The rabbis noted this document as evidence of Israel's ancient magnificence. With so many exaltations and praises, the experts started to fight back. A few said that those characters did not exactly look 10th century BCE. Some suggested that it may have been a later addition to prop up the legend. Others whispered that the timing was just too nice, too neat for the find. As these arguments developed, politics erupted. So hot was Jerusalem, already one of the most contested pieces of land on earth, that it became even worse. Governments were discussing the ownership claim over the site. The religious factions were fighting amongst themselves as to who really rightfully interpreted the find. Suddenly, Carter's excavation became more than archaeology, but a lightning rod for faith, history, and national identity. There were hints flying that officials were quietly moving to insulate access, fearing that the inscription could rekindle fresh strife. Nevertheless, there was something deeper that stirred beneath all that noise. For the archaeologists standing in that chamber, the carving did not simply confirm the existence of Sheba. It implied that the meeting with Solomon bore consequences that extended much further than the texts are willing to tell. Alliances meant common trade routes that surely stretched into Africa and Arabia. Symbols indicate that knowledge could have been shared, maybe even technological or architectural concepts. What if Solomon's wisdom was not purely divine insight, but rather an amalgamation of ideas harvested from several kingdoms? What if Sheba left hints behind, perhaps even fragments of her own culture interwoven into Israel's very matrix? Such questions grew loud in the ears of the team as they continued probing the wall. An alcove appeared right behind the Sheba inscription. sealed off with stone slabs that were thinner than the main door, yet definitely deliberate. Carter referred to this as a chamber within a chamber, like a whisper behind the story. When it broke open, there were no more inscriptions, no treasure, but a small gold object obscured in dust, a ring, thick, heavy, and incomparably royal. The star was embossed on its face, crude but almost freakishly similar to that engraved on the wall of the chamber. And just when the debate hit its peak, a golden seal emerged from the dust. The golden ring shimmered under the archaeologists' trembling flashlights. Its surface was rough, hand-carved, yet the symbol engraved on it was unmistakable, a six-pointed star. To modern eyes, it looked like the Star of David, but this version was ancient, raw, and heavy with meaning. Lab tests would later confirm that the gold's metallurgy aligned perfectly with the 10th century BCE, the very time of Solomon. For Carter and her team, this wasn't just jewelry, it was identity, a seal that might have stamped decrees, marked treaties, and authenticated the rule of Israel's most legendary king. The possibility that this was Solomon's personal ring electrified the world.